All right, so welcome to Language Arts Week 9. Most of us have a really good idea of what is going to be asked of us this week and what we're going to be doing. And so hopefully this is review and helpful. First, what are we doing this week? So number one goal is to complete our final copy of our story. We're going to be doing that by assessing your writing, and you're going to turn your writing in with a final rubric, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. This week is our last week of independent reading log. So if you haven't shared that with me yet, share it by Friday and continue adding to it. And then I'm going to discuss an optional Dia de los Muertos article and activities. So happy Dia de los Muertos to everyone. Today is Dia de los Muertos, which is a holiday celebrated by Latin American countries, and it's a holiday that I celebrate in my family, and it's a special way to honor and remember ancestors and loved ones that have passed. And so CNN published a really great article that I have put in the agenda if you're interested in learning more about Dia de los Muertos and maybe bringing that tradition into something that you're doing or practicing today. So we're looking now at our schedule for the week. And so again, you're going to see that to-do list that our final story is due this Friday. I'm really encouraging you to attend Class Connects tomorrow. And if you look at the schedule, we're all together right now. It's 10:30 on Monday, and we're in our whole group session. Tomorrow's writing workshops are open to everyone. So that means arrive at 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11, or 11:30. It's up to you. You can come to all of them if you want to. And we're just going to be looking at our writing, looking for how to improve. If you want to sign up for one-on-ones, these are available. And if you click here, you'll just see my schedule and you can sign up. Here's the optional Dia de los Muertos article that I pulled for this week as an activity. If you finished your book, you might read articles for independent reading this week, and then you'll be submitting that reading log on Friday. And then we're going to be writing our final version of our creative writing story and assessing your story. Here's an example document and an example video that I'm about to show you, and we're aiming to turn that story in by this Friday. Many of you are still working on your book reports, which is absolutely fine. You just won't see that in the reading agenda here, but you might make a copy of this document, and I will send this to you, and I will post it, and I will put it in the chat when I'm done with this lesson. And so yeah, I'm creating all the space you need to be able to finish that book report, be able to finish this writing, and there will be no new assignments next week. So keep that in mind as you're planning. All right. So this is our quarter one progression, and your eyes might get really big when you look at that, but I sent this out last week to you and your families, and I just wanted to review it. It's a really helpful document if you've fallen behind the pace of the class at all, which several of you have, and that is totally okay. So we have writing over here in the left-hand column, and it's just week by week. And if you need to rewatch a video lesson, you can do that by clicking here. If you want to look at the agenda, you can click here. But these items in blue are all links to the documents that you need to be completing your writing progression. So you can see, story 1 and story 2, you just wrote in a Google Doc and you shared them with me. Then we did a free write journal week 6. Week 7, we read and assessed story number 1 and story number 2 using that rubric. And then you wrote a second draft. You did another reflection of rubric last week and a story arc. And then you're beginning writing your final draft. And this week, you're going to paste that final draft into a reflection assessment. And that's going to be the document that is your final story. And again, I'll show you how to do that. If you need access to your independent reading log. This is when it was shared. The items here in red are the activities and quizzes that we did in Fuel Ed at the start of the term. Here's a link to your book report if you're still needing that, and then you can kind of read through this progression. And here's a link to that optional Dia de los Muertos article that I'm offering this week. And then over in the blue column, we have things that we've done, this term. Remember our author visit. Clark Carlton came week 4, and Kendall Sand came week 7. This was a story arc of a show that most of you have done that we did week 6, and these are all sort of relating, whether we're writing, reading, or noticing. We have been just kind of analyzing and practicing that beautiful story arc. And here is a link that you and your families might think are fun. It is fun to check out. These are just optional Dia de los Muertos activities. And if you do anything, I would love for you to take a photo and share it with me. All right, so reviewing those writing targets, remember show, don't tell with dialogue and blocking. Dialogue is letting us hear your characters speak, and blocking is letting us know what your characters are doing while they're speaking. And the second writing target is a story arc that rises, it has a climax, and it resolves. And if you wanted to push yourself beyond, you could be working on attention-grabbing lead sentences and explosive moments of detail. And we will come back to those goals when we are back together next term. So the story arc, you used this document a few times, but we're going to be talking about this rising conflict today here, a climax, and a resolution. And you're going to be actually marking up your final draft before you submit it. So this is the final story and rubric that you're going to be using, and I am going to explain how to use it in this video. All right, so here we are, and it is time to assess my final story. I've worked so hard on it over the last several weeks, and I'm ready to turn in. So the first step, I'm going to write my full name here, and I'm going to pretend like my student name is Mateo Smith. And then the second is to add my full name to the beginning of this file. So I'm going to float up here to the name of this Google Doc, and I'm going to add my first and last name to the file and save it. And that just helps Miss Dobson with keeping everything organized. And then the third step is to paste my final draft in the space below this rubric. So I've done this here, and I'm gonna use for this purpose the Night Watch model short story that we read a few weeks ago as we were first starting this creative assignment unit, this creative writing assignment unit, excuse me. And now I'm going to read my final draft with someone at home or with a peer, but I'm going to read my draft with someone ideally. If there is no one to read it with, that's perfectly fine. But I just recommend meeting with someone to go over your final draft. And then step 5 is highlight your favorite and best examples of your writing hitting our targets. So these are the same writing targets: dialogue and blocking, and a healthy story arc. And a healthy story arc has rising action and conflict, a climax, and resolution. And that is an excellent plot. So we're shooting for 4s here. And, some of us will get there and some of us will not. But a 4 is that there is dialogue and blocking that shows with vivid detail what characters are saying, thinking, feeling, seeing, and doing throughout the story. So when I read my example story or the story that I've submitted, I'm going to be highlighting in yellow those moments of dialogue and blocking that are really exceptional. As I'm reading, and some of these might overlap, and that's okay, I'm also going to be reading for or looking for the best examples where I am creating conflict in my writing. I want to identify the climax, and then I want to show how I've offered resolution and conclusion in my story arc. So let's try this out together. For ease, I'm just going to copy this right here and move it down so that I can look at it as I am reading. All right, so I'm just going to start reading here. Um, Alan and the other campers sat around the fire chewing meat chops. It would be Alan's first night in a tent, and he was excited, if a little nervous. Just showing a little nervous, I might decide to highlight that green. That's just showing that there's a little bit of conflict. As they ate, the conservation officer spoke. Much of the wildlife in this area comes out only at night. So after supper, let's start a night watch. Volunteers will take shifts staying down here by the fire, away from the tents. Those who take part will get a chance to see a world that many of you never knew existed. So that is great dialogue and blocking. So I'm going to highlight it because it's a proud moment in my writing. Alan's stomach tightened. That is building conflict. So I am going to highlight that in green. Isn't it dangerous? Someone asked. No, it's quite safe, the officer said. There are no dangerous animals this close to Cape Town. Any volunteers? A tough-looking kid with red hair muttered something about needing a good night's sleep. Another boy spoke up. I'll take a shift. The kid who'd sat next to Alan on the bus volunteered. Alan sat tight. Then one of the girls raised her hand with a giggle. Alan frowned. If a girl could do it, he could do it too. He volunteered. So there's some conflict here where Alan is sitting and waiting it out. And then because another person volunteered, he decides to. There's some internal conflict for Alan right there. A few more kids, and I want to point out that there is dialogue here, but there's not exceptional blocking happening necessarily with it. And so I haven't highlighted it yet, but that doesn't mean that I haven't seen it. It just means that maybe it's not my favorite example of dialogue and blocking that I want to highlight right now. A few more kids raised their hand. Then the officer explained, "This is how it works. When the rest of you go to bed, the first watcher takes his or her place by the fire. The duty of the watcher is to keep the fire gently going. After 30 minutes, he or she wakes the next person." Alan heard his voice asking, "Are you sure it's absolutely safe?" So this is an example of kind of a cross. So we're just going to do our best with highlighting. This is revealing, this is great dialogue and blocking, and it's also great, an example of revealing the character's conflict. Are you sure it's absolutely safe? So I just did a half and half there, and that's what I'll ask you all to do as well. The officer looked at him. Well, nothing is absolutely safe. Crossing the road isn't absolutely safe, but the danger is minimal. We wouldn't have taken you here otherwise. Do you still want to volunteer? All right, and I think that this is great dialogue again, and it's helping build conflict. So I'm going yellow, and I'm going green. Do you still want to volunteer? That open-ended question. And I'm just going to go back and make sure that I'm still following the right colors. I'm going to scoop this and delete it from the top because I want to be able to see it as I'm working down my paper. So I might just stick it right in here in the middle, just so that it's easy for me to spot. Alan nodded but felt uneasy. All right, so that is continuing to support this internal conflict. Sleeping in a tent with other campers had sounded okay, but the idea of being alone in the middle of the night made him shudder. Alone in the middle of the night is making him shudder. That's major conflict, friends. The officer announced the order of the watch. At 2:10 in the morning, Alan found himself crouching by the fire, a great world of darkness pressing in beyond the small circle of firelight. He had never been so scared. This is a beautiful example of building conflict. He is terrified, and words like great world of darkness, crouching by the fire, never been so scared, tell my audience that this is so scary. The camp had started off all right. And that's actually a typo right there. Since Alan and his family had just moved to Cape Town, the idea of learning about the wildlife in this part of South Africa had sounded great. Earlier that day, the officer had challenged the campers to spot animal tracks along the river. That was fun, but being alone in the dark was not. I'm going to highlight that again. Alan's flashlight was already fading to a dim glow because he had used it too often. All right, so this is not good. The flashlight is dimming. That is a problem. And do you notice that all of this green is happening because we're building towards the climax? We're not going to see patterns of green, red, green, red, green, red. And if we do, then we know we've got a problem in our story arc. There were only a few logs, so he couldn't build up the fire. This is another problem. Only a few logs, so he can't build up the fire. A nice glowing fire would make this really not so scary. He looked at the stars and the rising moon. It wasn't as dark as he thought it would be. He took comfort in that and tried to relax a little. Looking around, Alan thought he saw a large bird swooping and wondered if it was an owl. He had seen small paw prints in the sand by the river. Was the owl hunting for the creature that had made them? Okay, now we're reminded of the creature that had made those paw prints. So that is making me a little uneasy. All right. Then there was a noise, a clatter. Alan froze. Something was there in the darkness. Alan's mouth went dry. What was it? Slowly he reached for his flashlight. He heard another metallic sound near the cooking pots. Alan's fingers stabbed at the button on the flashlight. There, with a discarded bone in its mouth, was a creamy brown creature with dark spots and a striped tail. It was about as big as his cat at home, but longer. Alan stared, and the creature stared back, its round ears pricked and its sharp nose twitching. Then it was gone. Alan felt a rush of excitement. Had it been real? He looked around. No more noises. He crawled near the pots and saw small dog-like paw prints. Carefully, he rearranged the pots to cover them. Not long after that, he woke up the next camper for night watch and managed to sleep a little. So what we just had there with those short sentences and the beat of our we could feel our hearts start racing, that, friends, was the climax. So he had felt a rush of excitement. That is, and had it been real? He looked around, no more noises. He crawled near the pots and he carefully arranged the pots to cover them. Why is he doing that? I know, because, I'm pretending that I'm the author, so I know why. Not long after that, okay, we read that part. The next morning, the officer asked for reports. One girl said, and I'm going to paragraph here. One girl said she had seen an owl, though she couldn't say what it looked like. There were beetles, ants, perhaps a mouse. Most kids claimed to have heard noises in the darkness. I saw something, said Alan, and he described it. Then he moved the pots and showed everyone the tracks. Okay, so getting to tell what had happened, that he saw this animal, that is tying up loose ends. Well done, you've met our local spotted Janae, said the officer, smiling. Normally a Janae lives on mice and birds, but this one likes chopped bones too. He visits our campsite sometimes, but only if the watcher is very quiet. Good for you. So that's great dialogue and blocking. And it's also really nice to hear, when he was so scared, to hear this camp leader say, good for you. And well done. You've spotted our local Janae. That's resolution, because until this sentence, we did not know the animal that he had seen. Alan held his head high. Inside, though, he knew it was fear that had kept him so quiet. Next time, he thought, I will be just as quiet, but no longer afraid. So he's holding his head high. Next time, he's not going to be afraid. That is revealing a lesson learned. And that is, oops, that was too dark of a blue. That is the end goal, that in a resolution, you are tying up loose ends. He was very scared at the start of his story, and we see all of this green as conflict is building. I just see this word, isn't it dangerous? That helps. And so you might read through twice and look for more examples. And so it goes green, green, green on one side. The climax is red. And then we have resolution happening after the conflicts. Notice that after the climax. Notice that dialogue and blocking is happening on both sides, but also notice that I didn't highlight all dialogue and blocking because it's not all exceptional. This would be an example right here. I saw something, said Alan, and he described it. All right, that is half showing because you're showing the words, so we get to hear the words, and he described it. We don't get to hear his description, or even if you didn't want to go so far as to re-describe what he had seen because you just did that in the red in the climax, at least say how Alan is talking or what people are doing when he's talking. So I didn't highlight that because it's not an example of great dialogue and blocking. I hope that this is helpful, and I will provide this template as well. Okay, and so again, then you're going to be taking that information and that colorful, color-coded example of your or version of your final copy, and you will be assessing yourself. So if you feel like you have really great dialogue and blocking and there's lots of yellow highlighted in your story, then you might be giving yourself a 3.5, or even a 4. When it comes down to rising conflict, climax and resolution, you're going to hopefully see a lot of green in the first part of your story, a big dash of red at the climax, which is explosive detail, and then and very exciting, and then blue kind of coming down the other side of that mountain. So if I were to look at this visual, the conflict would be in green here as events are rising, the climax would be in red, and the resolution or the falling action would be in blue. So you'll be turning that in. Just a reminder that, the book report is past due, but many of you are still working on it, and that's awesome. I've said that several times. I just really want to make sure that that's okay, that we're aiming to have our things in this Friday, our writing. Next week is a catch-up week, and so remember that there's just a link to the book report, and remember that the goal is to be enjoying reading and writing together this week and every week. It is hard to be doing projects like a very large paper and a book report and independent reading in isolation, away from each other. And so please practice giving yourself lots of pep talks. Make sure you are saying things out loud that are positive about yourself, like, I'm awesome, I'm working really hard, I read a ton today, I'm writing really well, I feel great about this. And when you are feeling frustrated or you feel overwhelmed, take a break. Please take a break. Shut your computer, walk outside, talk with someone, go for a jog, do whatever you do that helps you feel good, and jump back into the reading and writing in healthy ways. And please connect with me if you have questions about anything. And again, I'll just show you, I'm going to go back really quickly to look at our schedule for the week. So we're together right now in whole group. Tomorrow we'll meet anytime, 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, and then optional one-on-one signups if you just need to check in and have me look closely at your work with you. So it is week 9, and make it a great one. Enjoy the sunshine today. We have some rain coming, and be reading and writing for fun. All right, you guys are the best. Happy Monday.